I think we can all agree, can't we, that one of the first signs of a dictatorship in the making is when restrictions are placed against the press in the country where the drift toward fascism is accelerating. After restrictions are placed, then editors or writers may find themselves arrested or detained. And then the owners of various publishing outlets are told, listen, you better get in line with the official stories that come from the government, which means don't criticize the government. Well, guess what has happened in Israel? The government there moved yesterday, Sunday, to shut down the Al Jazeera media network's operation in Israel. I'm sure you've heard about that. And which means simply that Israel is eliminating one of the most, or one of the few international broadcasters that are providing pretty much uninterrupted coverage of the Gaza war. And of course, Israel, I think the leadership of Israel understands fully that they are committing war crimes, but I also think they understand they can get away with it because, first of all, who is going to pursue them? The International Criminal Court, the ICC, or the ICJ? I forget how it's captioned. But Israel has decided, I shouldn't say Israel, Netanyahu and his war cabinet said the decision followed a unanimous vote by that war cabinet. And he posted on X, Netanyahu did, that, quote, the incitement channel Al Jazeera will be closed in Israel, end quote. And then in a separate statement, he accused Al Jazeera, the correspondents and the reporters and the photojournalists of having, quote, harmed the security of Israel. And the time has come to eject Hamas's mouthpiece from our country, end quote. That is... It's a frightening thing to me to see. I don't believe that Al Jazeera, I don't believe for a minute that Al Jazeera is Hamas's mouthpiece. Al Jazeera is not a terror organization. I don't think Netanyahu would call the newspaper Haaretz in Israel a terror organization, although Haaretz has been extremely critical of the Netanyahu government up to and including the slaughter that's going on in Gaza. Now, the actions taken by Netanyahu, taken by his government, is right in step with several autocratic countries in the region that have tried to stifle Al Jazeera. It's certainly not just the Jews in Israel who don't like Al Jazeera's reporting. It's also Muslims in Arab countries and countries that are not Arab. The Al Jazeera has gotten a lot of praise and controversy since it was founded about 30 years ago. And it helped reshape the media landscape in the Arab world, as the Washington Post puts it. And that's true. Al Jazeera has not been the type of controlled media controlled by one country, Iran, pick a country, Saudi Arabia, Syria before it was destroyed. Anyway, the board of Israel's Foreign Press Association, issued a statement that said, quote, this is a dark day for the media. This is a dark day for democracy, end quote. Now, those are not Muslims or Arabs or Persians or what have you making that statement. Those are Israelis. And the move to shut it down, to kick it out of Israel, is also threatening to really piss off Qatar. That's Al Jazeera's sponsor, the nation of Qatar, at a time when that country, Qatar, is playing a key role in trying to mediate these peace talks or ceasefire talks, or the negotiations between Hamas and Israel. Anyway, yesterday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, According to the Washington Post, several uniformed and plainclothes Israeli officers were seen entering one of Al Jazeera's offices in a hotel in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood of East Jerusalem, which is in Israel, of course. And a Washington Post reporter saw this and, of course, immediately reported on it. The officers carried out camera equipment, also cases and cardboard boxes, as a group of photographers just kind of stood there. They weren't sure what to do. When you're dealing with a fascist government, which is what Netanyahu is establishing in Israel, you don't want to make any sudden moves, if you know what I mean. So these photographers just watched. Stephanie Decker, who is a senior foreign correspondent for Al Jazeera English, said, quote, "They confiscated the equipment and closed the office as per Netanyahu's order." End quote. And then in a statement Sunday, Al Jazeera criticized what it called, quote, "a deceptive and slanderous move occurring less than a week after World Press Freedom Day." Wow. Anyway, the statement from the network also said this, quote, "Al Jazeera Media Network strongly condemns and denounces this criminal act that violates human rights and the basic right of access to information." And the statement also said, "Al Jazeera affirms its right to continue to provide news and information to its global audience." And also the statement from Al Jazeera added that the news website had been blocked and some transmissions halted, both in Israel. Well, the staff had its accreditation withdrawn, so they are no longer considered accredited journalists in Israel. But this is how it works. You know this as well as I do. Anyway, Al Jazeera said it, quote, "vehemently rejects the allegations presented by Israeli authorities, suggesting professional media standards have been violated," end quote. And as to be expected, because this is part of it, this is why Netanyahu is ordering this, Al Jazeera accused Israel of attempting to, quote, "conceal its actions in the Gaza Strip," end quote. Well, of course. And of course, Israel can't be singled out as the only country when it's committing war crimes that doesn't want the world to know about it. The United States, when we are committing war crimes, we don't want the world to know about it. The Russians don't want the world to know about their war crimes. Nobody does. So in that regard, Israel is just acting like any country that is committing war crimes and doesn't want the world to know about it. Imran Khan, who is a senior correspondent for Al Jazeera English, also said in a post on Instagram that the ban, quote, was only from Israel and will not stop the channel from broadcasting from the West Bank or Gaza, which in theory is Palestinian territory. Now, just in case you don't know, I don't know what happened to Al Jazeera English on American cable networks. It used to be available. Maybe it still is. Maybe I just don't have it. I have one of the AT&T networks, and I don't know if they carry Al Jazeera, but it was created in 1996. It includes English and Arabic language news channels. It also has news websites and a large social media presence. And the funding comes from the Qatari government. And Al Jazeera quickly became known for hosting freewheeling debates on delicate topics previously unheard of on the state-run Arab media outlets, okay? The audience at Al Jazeera grew as it covered the U.S.-led military campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as the Arab Spring uprisings that began in late 2010. So Al Jazeera, in my humble opinion, has acted in the capacity that one would expect from a news-gathering organization. It has reported, it has photographed, it has videoed, it has tried to present as honest approach to what's going on in this particular case. This is why Netanyahu closed him down. An honest approach to what is happening in Gaza and the suffering of the people there. But of course, a military dictatorship like the one that Netanyahu is trying to establish does not want these truths to get out. And so it goes, huh? Imagine what will happen here if Trump gets the presidency again. I shudder to think about it.
Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.